we started on the rabbis and where they had the chutzpah to, take upon themselves the prophetic mantle, and I believe that where they get it from is the verse, hey, if you don't know what to do, ask the sage of your time. There you go, away to the races. That was, basically the source. And then last week, we started on what I thought was the second part of the previous week that we weren't able to get to because it's too much. And we only got through half of it because we got on this huge digression, which included parliamentary systems in different countries and Israel and how the lists work and the relative values of Canadian versus American systems and Israeli systems, and whether the president is the head of state, yes, always, but is the president the head of the government or not, and how that slips out, and why we were talking about it, I don't know.
That's next semester anyhow. That's next semester.
Yeah, okay. But, so I just figured we would just try to finish up what I prepared last week, this week. And one of you, and I thought I had more. I thought I had more. You guys may need to share.
Exactly.
So I can grab my, well, no, because I use totally different translations for them. Okay, so, and last week we just did just this page. You brought your own, right? Because you took yours, right?
I know I took it, but it's.
But you didn't bring it back. Oh, for
I
goodness
had
sake.
so much to remember this morning between sour cream.
Okay, I'm gonna make some more copies then.
I'll take it, I'll have them.
I can
You
do
don't
that.
have to get out. They have a thing for that. You know, you get, when I worked for Blue Cross,
So-
I got it automatically. When you
One,
get hired,
two,
you got a
three.
box.
So we need like 3 copies.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'll just sit here then. No, so if you give me, if you lend me yours, I'll review for, Brian Reich's what they missed last week. Okay? So,
That's in parliamentary seasons. Parliamentary, but okay, go ahead.
no, we can do that too, just while we're on the aside, why not?
Last week we had to go to the board 3 times.
So let's put it this way, the Israeli system is horrible.
Yes, okay.
Well, the Israeli
Pick up
system's
on
kind of
some of
nice.
that too.
Okay,
Really good.
so you have your head of state, you have your head of executive, head of state, you have your head of government, and then you have your legislation. Right, head of state, head of government, head of the legislative group, and, right, okay. So in the USA, the head of state is the president, and the head of government is the president, right? And the head of the legislature is the speaker.
That's one house.
The other house I don't care about. It's not real, it doesn't matter,
Okay.
because it'll take care of itself, okay? In Canada, the head of state is the king, or the governor general, if you will. And the head of government is the prime minister. And the head of the legislature is the prime minister. The speaker is an independent, no vote person, just like the Senate in this country. In Israel,
That's not true.
what?
Except in a tie, then the head of the Senate
Gets to vote, but for all intents and purposes, the head of the Senate does not set the policy or the direction or what goes to the floor.
There is a president pro tem of the Senate.
Yes,
And
that's
it,
the
and
first
it, and
president.
usually turns out to be the most senior member
Yeah.
of the Senate. and it's senior, I believe, in terms of age,
Yeah.
not in terms of years of
Right,
service.
Right, but the person who decides the legislative flow in the Senate is the Senate Majority Leader.
Correct.
Right. Okay. But in the House, it's not the House Majority Leader, it's the Speaker.
Correct.
Good, okay, that's why I'm not bothering with the Senate, because it just complicates things. Because, okay, well, you know something? We can, leader of the Senate, fine. In the USA, it's the Majority Leader. Okay. In Canada, the head of the Senate, who cares?
It actually has said.
Canada has a Senate, absolutely,
It's appointed.
absolutely. I mean,
It's appointed, it's like the House of
It's-
Lords.
it's appointed, yeah, but the thing is that,
What does it do?
Not much.
okay, so, what does it do? For the most part, what it really does is, because they've been there forever, when in between first readings and second reading of bills in the House of Commons, senators come by with their expertise and say, hey, you could do this, you could do this, you could do that, and they kind of vet things so that by the time it actually passes the House and comes to the Senate, it's actually, reasonable. Otherwise, they just give a sober second thought on things. Occasionally, they can introduce motions, but they're just kind of,
Yeah.
they're kind of,
Consultants.
anyways, who cares? And then in Israel, the head of state is the president. Okay. The head of government is the prime minister, and the head of the legislature is also the prime minister. And they don't have
I
Senate.
thought there was a speaker.
Yeah, but the speaker doesn't set the agenda. Okay, in terms of setting the agenda, right? See, in Canada, the speaker is independent. In Britain, the speaker is independent. In Israel, the speaker is independent. In America, the speaker is actually running the place, which means they're not impartial. Okay. The thing is, this executive. In the United States,
You have one?
the head of state
Oh, I
and the executive are the same person, right? In Canada, the head of state, the executive and the prime minister are the same person, and the same thing in Israel. Here, this is a symbolic, there's no power. Here it's symbolic, no power. And why this came up in the other bit is that these are much less expensive to maintain because you don't need tons of security because nobody cares. Okay, if the king gets killed, I mean, it's the next king, right? And the president, he doesn't do anything.
When was the last time you were in Ottawa?
Oh, I'm saying, look, what I'm saying is, but they don't have to go out much. They go out for symbolic things.
Try to walk into her company.
I understand, but Phil, right, okay? If we call a meeting of the G7, you don't need this level of security for these guys. But this person, oh my God, anytime you take this guy out somewhere, you need this huge security, it's a big pain, right? He's the only one who brings his own limousine, wherever he goes, okay? So I'm just saying it's a difficult system.
So does,
Yeah, and the other thing I said, and this was just a dig at you guys. The cabinet, okay, and this is just me being mean,
There were a lot of dates.
okay? This is just, I'm being mean, okay? In Canada, the cabinet is drawn from the House and theoretically the Senate, because
you're in the wrong color.
I meant to draw a straight line, okay? In Canada, it's drawn from the cabinet's drawn from the House and the Senate. So you have a choice from about, around 480 people from which you're able to get 15 men, 15 women, and a representative who are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Native American, and every other group represented. In the United States, for the cabinet, you can have any of 330 million people minus the 535 who are in the Senate and the legislature. So you can only choose from 330 million people minus 535.
You can choose from them, they have to give up their seat.
Which means that you, in essence, okay? So they're no longer there, so they're no longer, okay. So you can draw anyone except for people who are serving there. And there you end up with a whole bunch of old, white men. And it's amazing, because in the
Gina Raimondo, the Secretary of the Interior is a Native American.
Oh, Deb Howland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and let me see who else we
Secretary of
have.
Defense.
The
Yeah.
Secretary of Defense
Yeah.
is,
No, that's Austin, isn't he?
Yeah, it's
He's a
Austin.
black man.
Yeah,
he's a black man,
right,
he's a
right,
black
right,
man.
right, but I'm saying is,
So wait, I don't, yeah, okay, what are you saying?
what I'm saying is, if
We're arguing.
6 members of your cabinet get the flu, you only have white men left.
Well, that happens with everybody who isn't white, gets the flu, no matter where you are.
Flu?
No, what I'm saying is,
Maybe they get RSV,
But-
or maybe they get COVID.
but is it gender balanced? Is there men and women
Yes.
Yes.
equal?
Well, wait a minute, who says it has to be equal?
In Canada, they.
Well, Canada is equal.
That's their system, they have.
There's an equal number of men and women.
Well, then it must be in their constitution.
No, it's because Trudeau said it's 2017, of course.
So therefore, wait a minute, so when Trudeau loses office at the next election, the next person doesn't have to follow that.
I can
But-
all white
right,
men.
but-
And-
but
and
what
can I
I'm-
all-
Fine,
but
wait.
Okay, but what I'm saying,
Oh,
but,
wait a minute.
okay, so what I'm saying is, when it comes to gender representation, the lack of women in the American cabinet is a decision, because they only have 330 million people to choose from. Whereas Canada, they only have 480 people to choose from, and they were able to find 15 women who were good. That was the dig.
That was a dig.
That was the-
We're gonna have to take
We're
a
divided
vote.
either, but-
Like,
Well,
Which is the best system?
Rabbi, I'm glad you dug yourself into a hole.
Good. Because I have to be wrong about something.
You don't.
I think we got into that discussion because we were saying, what kind of authority do rabbis have? And we
Okay.
decided, no,
Anyways, so here we are. Now, everyone has a page now, great, they had fun with that. No, it's just like, if you are really serious about gender equality, you can make it happen.
Everybody is serious.
I mean, the cabinet here, the cabinet could be 1/3 Hispanic and 1/4 Black, and
but we prefer to have the most
And very-
qualified people
get a whole bunch,
rather than have different ethnic groups
have the
represented.
most qualified people, because you only have 330 million people.
Right.
You're telling me
And we
there
only
aren't
choose the
more
most
than,
qualified.
are you serious? You only choose the most qualified.
Well, that's the ideal, is supposed to be the most qualified.
Not really, they have to be the right party, and they have to have some sort
Anyways,
of.
Well, wait, and you have to have consent by the Senate.
That's true.
And how many nominees have been rejected by the Senate as being not qualified? Some are not qualified for political reasons.
So now that we've established, let's go back to my moral of the rabbis, okay? Now, so they had the argument over Hanukkah lights, which was relevant last week and still this week, and basically it says, how can you say, Asher kisham v'isatav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah, Find me the mitzvah of Hanukkah lights in the Torah, I dare you. I tell you what, I'll even let you have a whole Bible, all the way through to Divrei HaYamim, and you're not gonna find it, so
Except for the Apocrypha.
it's not
It's, it could be.
in the Bible. It could have been, but the rabbis took a pass on it, and okay? I mean, the rabbis took a pass on Hanukkah during the Mishnah, okay? So, the question is, what gives you the chutzpah to come up with these 7 extra biblical mitzvot? Like Shabbos candles. Asher kishon mitzvotav v'tzivanu ladlik ner shel Shabbat? Really? Where is that? It's not in it.
Unwritten law.
So the answer is, you can find it from, you shall not turn aside from the sentence which they declare to you, the right or the left. Even if they say left is right and right is left, you do it. Rev Nehemiah says, ask your father and he shall instruct you, and your elders, they will tell you, okay? Then we went to the mission.
What does that answer the question?
It means the authority to invent mitzvot is in the Torah, in the phrase, ask your elder and they'll tell you what to do. So that's the ability to manufacture mitzvot. Okay? Yes,
Infinite numbers.
yes, but so far they're kind of, they're very reluctant about it, because you can't invent a mitzvah that nobody will do, because it makes you look foolish. Principle for that is in last week's Haftarah, right? Stop looking for the prostitute, you'll look foolish. You'll make us look foolish if you keep looking for this woman who doesn't exist, okay? Just forget trying to pay her off, okay? Okay, and a makot,
That was sorry. Okay.
well, you're right, yeah, it was. Yeah, right, because the Haftarah
Let's
was,
work on it.
Zechariah.
yeah, and it had a,
And they're Chakafua. Yes, I remember.
and then we had a debate. Okay, good, you were there for that. Okay, so, makot, the Bible says 40 lashes, the rabbi says it's 39, it's 40 minus 1, 39, right? And they do this by sort of going over the enakta between by number 40 and say, oh, around 40, and it's like, how can you do that? So apparently, and this is where we're coming to here, Rabbi said, how foolish are the rest of the people who stand before a Torah scroll that passes before them, and yet they do not stand before a great man, when a sage passes before them. As in a Torah scroll, 40 is written, and the sages came and subtracted one, establishing the number of lashes at 49. Apparently,
39.
apparently the authority of the sages is so great that they're able to amend an explicit Torah verse. And we talked about how we do that in our liturgy with Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'Chanun. You know, forgiving? No way, does not forgive. Up to the third, fourth, and generation, God beats you up. And the rabbis changed that. Okay, so the rabbis have 2 abilities so far that we've noticed. One is they can invent mitzvot, and number 2 is they can change what the Torah means. Woohoo! And then we are looking at the big problem this week. Okay, so this is
So,
what?
I might be ahead of you, but I was taught that the reason that you did 39 was in case you miscounted, and therefore you give 49 instead
Right.
of 40.
Yes. But then they also have this thing of saying, well, we make an estimate, how many do you think you can take? I think I could take 15. Okay, we'll give you 15. And at the end of 15, how are you doing? Oh, I think I can take one. No, it's too late. We settled on 15, 15 is what it is. But yeah, you're right, that's the reasoning for it, but still, it says count 7 times with the blood, and they don't do 6, they do 7, and he counts 1 and 1, 1 and 1, 2 and 1, 3 and 1, right, he counts 7, there's no reason why they couldn't do 40 and just be more careful about it.
Well, but I thought it was in terms of embarrassment of the
Yeah.
person who was
Yeah.
being
Yeah. So, but in any event, they're not doing what the text says. Whether they're doing it for a good reason or for a bad reason, they're still not doing it. Okay? And they say you may not give more than 39. Okay. So now we've got the problem of the economy, right? And just to give a reminder, the Shemitah cycle, if you give loans of money to someone, there's a 7-year cycle. The 7th year is a year of remission, all debts are forgiven. So I give money here, and then I'm waiting. I hope I'll get it. I hope I get it. I hope I get it. I hope I get it. I'm not getting it. Which means that when someone says, hey, can I have some money this year? You might think to yourself, nah, I'm not gonna lend to you. Definitely, I'm never gonna lend to you here, right? And the text specifically says, do not have in your mind this evil thought, the year of Shemitah is coming, I will not lend. Okay. Who on earth would ever agree to this kind of system? And the answer is, the system is not about economic loans. It's not about industry, it's about food. The only reason you're buying money during this, borrowing money, is to buy food because you are starving, and the hope is that you'll not be starving later. And you really have to understand that when it's called a loan, it's really a gift with the hope of maybe getting something back. In the sense of, and this is good advice, if your family ever asks to borrow money, tell them it's a loan, write it off as a gift. Because you're never getting it back. And if you do give it back, what are you gonna say to them? 9 times out of 10, you're gonna say, keep the money and lend it to someone else. Okay, not 9 times out of 10, maybe 1 time out of 10. I knew someone who would always give people money, would always write off. Someone actually wanted to pay him back once. And he said, no, I can't take it. Here, you just pay it forward, okay? So the system in the Bible is to protect people from, being permanently poor because they had to borrow money for food, okay? You have to, a loan for meat. The problem is that if you want to have an economic system, you have to be able to loan money for larger times. When you do expect it back, and you expect it back with interest because it's an investment, right? And so you need to make a loan that's going to be longer than 7 years. And the question is, how do you do that when the Bible says it gets cut off? And the answer is we're gonna find out what they're gonna do, okay? But that's the challenge. How do I wanna build a building, I wanna invest in a business, I wanna give you startup capital, and I wanna know that I'm gonna get that back, right? Okay. Okay, here we go. So, Phil, why don't you start us off?
The Mishnah taught, it's getting.
Yep.
The Mishnah taught that Hillel the Elder instituted a document that prevents the sabbatical year from abrogating an outstanding debt.
Right. The word prosbal literally means document. Okay.
We learn in Mishnah there, should be 10:3. If one writes a prosbul, the sabbatical year does not abrogate the debt. This is one of the matters that Hillel the Elder instituted because he saw that the people of the nation were refraining from lending to one another around the time of the sabbatical year, as they were concerned that the debtor would not pay the loan, and they violated that which is within the Torah. Beware that there is not a base thought in your heart. Saying, the 7th year of the year of release is at hand, and your eye be evil against your needy brother, and you give him nothing. He arose and instructed the prosbul so that it would also be possible to collect those debts in order to ensure that people would continue to give loans.
Good. Okay, so that's the background. Okay. Now, let's find out what the content is.
And this is the essence of the text of the prosbul. I transfer to you, so and so the judges, or in such and such a place, so that I will collect any debt that I am owed by so and so whenever I wish, as the court now has the right to collect the debts. And the judges or the witnesses sign below, and this is sufficient. the creditor will then be able to collect the debt on behalf of the court, and the court can give it to him. The Gemara asks about the prose ball itself, but is there anything like this whereby Torah law, the sabbatical year, cancels the debt, but Hillel instituted that it does not cancel the debt?
Okay, stop right there. So, do you see what they're doing? I'm an individual, and I'm loaning money to an individual, but, so when I loan someone, it creates an obligation for them to give me back, right? By the way, this is how checks work, right? When you write a check, you know how it says to or the order of, right?
Mhm.
The check is actually a short letter saying, "Dear bank, you owe me money because I've made a deposit with you. I order," pay to the order of, "I order you to pay this much of that money to so-and-so." And then we sign. You can write that on a piece of paper, give it to someone, they can take it to the bank, and you might have some luck. Because if the bank doesn't give it to you, then the so-and-so can come back to you and say, "Hey, you gave me a bad letter." Then I can sue the bank for not paying them, right? That's what happens when someone, for not honoring the check. So there's all these cases in the case law about checks written on an eggshell, checks written here, checks written there. The banks probably now have rules saying, by the way, if you don't use our form, we're not gonna do it. But that's the core of it, right? I order you to pay someone else, okay? So this thing here is owed to me. I'm gonna instruct you, you don't owe it to me. I've established the court as my agent for reception. And so you should pay it to the court. And eventually I'll get it from the court when I want. Now, the great thing about the court is, unlike corporations in this country, the court is not a person. It's the town, it's a concept, right? And therefore, the law of canceling debts between people doesn't apply. Because this obligation is no longer obligated to him, it's obligated to the court.
Does this work in the diaspora when we're spread to different countries?
In the diaspora, well, the Shemitah year doesn't apply outside the diaspora anyways, so it's, yeah, it would work, sure.
But Shemitah only applies to the land of Israel.
I know, so it's not necessary, but if it was necessary, it would work. Hillel's writing at the time when Shemitah still exists.
Well, yes and no.
So there's no need for a prospo.
No, the prosbul. The prosbul is the document that creates this. That's the prosbul, the document. Dear so and so, you owe me money, I order you to pay to the court.
And who writes that? The lender?
The lender.
Or a rabbi?
The lender.
You don't have
The
to be
lender.
a rabbi to write that?
Well,
Anybody can write.
nobody's written a prosbul in a long time. I would think that the prosbul is probably written by the court and they make up the document, but it's to illustrate the concept, okay?
Well, but another, it's similar but not the same. You know, if a Jew owns a business.
Yeah.
Wants to keep it open on Shabbat.
Mhm.
He signs it over to a non-Jew, right? And then expects to get it back on, after Shabbat.
Right. Or conceivably, he could incorporate the business as a corporation, and then the corporation's an individual thing, and he can just be a shareholder.
Depends on the tax law.
It's all legal fiction anyhow.
I mean, it's all legal fictions, but yeah. Yeah, it's a similar thing with selling the ownership of the place on Shabbat, but the thing with selling the ownership of the place on Shabbat, theoretically, any income derived on Shabbat is going to the non-Jewish owner, and that's their share. That's way beyond my league. Okay. Or continue.
Okay, so where,
And this is the essence. Is,
and this is the essence, gotcha.
yeah, mhm,
Okay, it was further up than I thought.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is the essence of the text people would continue to give.
no, this is the essence
Oh,
of
and
the
it's
text of the prose
Of the
book.
prose ball,
Right,
sorry.
yep, that's okay.
And this is the essence of the text of the prose ball. I transfer to you so-and-so the judges who are in such and such a place, so that I will collect any debt that I am owed by so-and-so whenever I wish, as the court now has the right to collect the debts. And the judges or the witnesses sign below, and this is sufficient. The creditor will then be able to collect the debt on behalf of the court, and the court can give it to him. The Gemara asks about the prose ball itself. But is there anything like this, whereby Torah law, the sabbatical year, cancels the debt, but Hillel instituted that it does not cancel the debt? Abaya said the Baraita is referring to the sabbatical year in the present, and it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, as it is taught in a Baraita that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, the verses state in the context of the cancellation of debts, and this is the matter of the abrogation. He shall abrogate.
Okay, so now they're playing with the text again, right? And this is the essence of the abrogation. He shall abrogate right? But notice the word abrogation is there twice, right? Because that's how language works. But let's say if they're using the word twice, there must be two different kinds of abrogation. Okay, so keep going.
Okay. The verse speaks of two types of abrogation. One is the release of land, and one is the abrogation of monetary debts. Since the two are equated, one can learn the following. At a time when you release land, when the Jubilee year is practiced, you abrogate monetary debts. At a time when you do not release land, such as the present time, when the Jubilee year is no longer practiced, you also do not abrogate monetary debts.
Okay, so that is talking to Phil's point, right? If the Shemitah is no longer in effect, if the Jubilee is no longer in effect, then therefore Shemitah should no longer be in effect, right? And this isn't Shemitah for the crops. This is Shemitah for debts. So, okay. You remember what Jubilee is, right?
50.
Okay. Do you remember what Jubilee does?
It turns the land the owner.
Okay. The land is divided up into parcels belonging to A, B, C, and D. Over the course of time, A sells to Q, and B keeps his, but C sells it to W, and D sells it to A. But when they sell it, the price of the land is the value of the number of harvest years until the Jubilee. So if a parcel of land is worth $50, and I'm buying it in the 25th year of the cycle, there's only 24 years left, and there's only 25 years until the end, so it's now only $25. If I bought it next year, it'd be $24. If I bought it the following year, it'd be $23. Right?
Not quite.
Well, whatever the math works out.
Oh,
Right.
but there are streets on these tweets.
But those Shemitah years don't count, not for the land.
Well, you can't grow crops during the Shemitah.
True, but they'll average out. Just make the math easy on me, please, okay? Yeah, okay, sure, right. In a 50-year cycle, there's only gonna be, there's gonna be 7 years where there's not getting anything out of it, but let's just make math easy on me, okay? But we all agree, the closer you get to the Shemitah year, the Jubilee year, the cheaper the land is. And in the last year, you can sell it, for one, and then at the end of the year, A gets kicked out, D goes back, Q gets out, A comes back, B is still there, and W gets kicked out and C goes back, and everyone moves over again. It's like a poker tournament. And in round one, everyone, plays and plays and plays, and everyone starts out with a pot of $10, and then at the end of the thing, like who has 10,000, who has nothing, and then round two, it's reset, everyone has $10 again, okay? Because that's fun. Because that, you shouldn't be able to have inherited wealth over generations.
So it's not possible to permanently sell land
In Israel, yes.
in Israel today?
No.
No.
In the biblical times.
Right.
But by the way,
Yes, no.
Okay. In Quebec, it's not really possible to buy land either. You can only buy them on long leases of 100 years. And they ran into some troubles with cemeteries that at the end of the 100 years, they started disinterring bodies because, they don't own it anymore. It was a big mess, okay? Technically, right, it's like, you don't own the land, the queen owns the land. Okay, so, yeah, you can't really sell the land, you can't have absolute ownership.
They still do that in England, don't they?
I have no clue. Maybe, I don't know. Okay. Certainly, it's like those people who, build a house in a national park and they have a long lease. Someday it's gonna run out.
That's like I'm coming.
So the idea is because the 7-year Shemitah cycle of the release of debt is mentioned in the context of the 7 times 7 plus 1 Jubilee cycle, which is a remission of land, and both use the word remission, they say in order for this remission to be effective, this remission must still be effective, and if this remission is no longer effective, then this remission is no longer effective either. Problem goes away.
So then how come they still observe Shemitah in Israel today?
Well, that's just.
So modern Israel? Because they want to.
What if people don't want to?
Well, some do and
They
some
don't have to. Some do and some don't.
But it only applies to the growing of crops. It
Yeah.
doesn't apply to return of land.
Right. No, then nobody's returning land.
Right.
Trust me.
So it just applies to growing of crops.
Yep.
And then therefore Israel has to import from outside in order to satisfy those people who won't buy locally grown products.
Well, magically,
Unless,
Yeah.
of course.
the previous year had a double harvest,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't think hydroponics can because it's got to grow in the soil, but at any rate, but.
We can
but
make
there-
this as complex as we
Yes.
want, I mean, it's the whole system, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, Okay, Arlene, you're on a roll.
You want me to keep going? Can't Harriet have it?
Okay, Harriet can have a turn,
Why
okay.
should Harriet not have
Sure,
any
fine,
fun?
Harriet, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Rabbi Eliezer said. Wait, no, wait.
We were.
Oh, we're still on the other page, wait.
It's only
And
two
the sages
sentences.
For all-
Get in 36 feet.
There we go, yes, okay, I was at the bottom of that page for some reason. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
And the sages.
And the sages instituted that despite this, the sabbatical year will still abrogate it in the present, in remembrance of the Torah mandated sabbatical year.
Okay. In other words, when the Jubilee was in effect, we did Shemitah because we had to. Now that the Jubilee is no longer in effect, the sages say that we do Shemitah because we want to. Meaning the sages want to. And you can see where this is going to go. If the only reason we're observing Shemitah is on the power of the sages saying we should do it, then of course if the sages have the power to impose it, they have the power to make exceptions from it, like with the Crow's Bowl. That would make sense. Let's see if we're right. Okay.
Hillel saw that the people of the nation refrained from lending to each other, as he arose and instituted the prosper. According to this explanation, the ordinance of Hillel did not conflict with the Torah law. Rather, he added an ordinance to counter the effect of rabbinic law. According to this explanation, the sages instituted that even in the present, the sabbatical year would bring a cancellation of debt, despite the fact that by Torah law the debt still stands. The Gemara asks, but is there anything like this, where by Torah law the sabbatical year does not cancel the debt, and the sages institute that it will cancel? It is as though the sages are instructing the debtor to steal from their creditors, as by Torah law they still owe the money. Abaya says this is not actual fact. It is an instruction to sit passively and not do anything. The sages have the authority to instruct one to passively violate a Torah law, so long as no action is taken.
Okay, stop right there. Shev va'al ta'aseh. Just sit and don't do anything. Okay? As we mentioned last week, bodily emissions from the reproductive capacity of the body means you need to go to the mikveh, both for men and for women. So women need to go to the mikveh once a month, and men need to go to the mikveh every time there is a seminal emission, which could definitely be more often than once a month. However, in modern days, while there are mikvahot for women, mikvahs for men to go to every morning, they're not so popular. I mean, in some communities they have them and all the men go to the mikvah in the morning. It's great because it's like a, I love this. It's like, I've been told about this, it's kind of like the cattle washes they have at, where like you walk down the ramp, you walk through the water, duck your head, and then you walk out the other end. I mean, it's like a cattle wash, like a whole line of people going through. And some Hasidic communities have that, but for the most part, it was Shev va'al ta'aseh. Like we didn't bother with this mitzvah anymore.
Well, so it doesn't cancel the debt, they just don't collect it, so the debt still exists even if it's not collected. But I mean, it still exists, you can't make it not exist. I don't know, it offends my sense of justice.
It offends my sense of logic too.
Yeah, that's it.
But then they're undoing that.
I
Okay.
don't understand.
Yep.
this sentence. sages have the authority to instruct one to passively violate a Torah law.
Yep.
So long as no action is taken.
Yes.
And I don't understand passive versus action.
Passive.
Okay, so,
I think the word is violate is the problem. If it's passive, then you're not really violating it.
You're just not
You're
doing
just
it.
not doing
I
it.
ignored it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pay no attention to it and maybe it'll go
Ignored it.
away.
It'll go
But
away.
if I ignored it, I took an action.
okay,
No, no, you decided not to take an action, so that is a
Well, I
decision.
made a
So that-
decision.
Okay.
You're
That's
right.
like a decision.
there's a mitzvah aseh, mitzvah that you should do. And there are 365 things that you should do. And there's a mitzvah al ta'aseh, there's 240 of those, and those are don't do. If I do nothing, I'm okay on all of these, okay?
You're not supposed to do anything.
Right. Mitzvah aseh, if I do something, I've fulfilled the mitzvah. If I don't do it, I've failed the mitzvah. So for example, if don't doing it, I baked bread, I didn't take challah. I'm doing something, but I'm not doing the thing that needs to be done. Right? Or give a tithe, I'm not giving the tithe. Or pay the bill, I'm not paying the bill. I'm not taking any action, right?
Well, I am taking action, that's my problem.
Yes, but you're understanding the logical notion that to take no action is an action in and of itself,
Yes.
okay? However, we're talking about action in the is actually doing something as opposed to remaining status
As
quo.
opposed to thinking about it.
Right. So maintaining the status quo is an action, but it's not any activity, okay? Like, it's like lying in bed, okay? I've made the decision to lie in bed today and not go to work. That's the action I'm taking. However, I'm not acting at all. I'm asleep. So it's kind of, yes, logically it's an action, but it's not an action as far as we care. Okay? It's refraining, right? It's in the same way as you have the right to remain silent. That's an action you're taking, but you're not doing anything. You're being silent. Okay? So let's just all agree, for the sake of this getting through this page, that the decision to do nothing is a non-action. Okay? Otherwise we will be even more complex than the rabbis here. Okay. Okay, Abai says it is not actual theft, it's the instruction to sit passively and do nothing. The sages have the authority to instruct one to passively violate a Torah law as long as no action is taken. Rava's gonna disagree, Milton.
Rabbi says the sages are able to institute this ordinance because property declared ownerless by the court is ownerless. As Rabbi Yitzchak says, from where is it derived that property declared ownerless by the court is ownerless? That is a statement. And whoever did not come within 3 days, according to the council of the princes and the elders, all of his property shall be forfeited, and he shall be separated from his congregation of the captivity.
So that's Ezra. Ezra has a situation, and they're making everyone to come forward, and if you don't come forward, you're not gonna be confirmed in your ownership.
You can't do nothing.
That's a double negative. Yes, if you,
Well, now we're getting relatively late.
yeah, well, Ezra's still before the rabbis.
He precedes the rabbis.
Pardon me?
He precedes the rabbis.
right, like Ezra is the time of the Second Temple.
Yeah.
So he's, you know, and, you know, I mean, Ezra gives us some good halacha. We got the thing about not spending money on Shabbat from Ezra. He's a good source. Right? He's kosher. Okay.
let's see. The verse states, "These are the inheritances which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of Israel, tribes of the children of Israel, distributed for inheritance."
Okay, these are the inheritances which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers' houses, tribes, distributed for inheritance. Good, okay.
The Gemara asks, what do the heads have to do with the fathers? It comes to tell you, just as fathers transmit anything that they wish to their children, so too heads of the nation transmit to the people anything that they wish. This demonstrates that the court has the authority to take property from one person and to give it to another. Therefore, the sages have the authority to decide when all debts are canceled.
Okay, let's stop right here. So, this is a Gezerah Shava of sorts. The verse says that the heads and the fathers have the ability to pass on property. So if the fathers have the ability to pass on property, make decisions on who owns it and who doesn't, therefore, heads have the same ability to make decisions on property, and the heads, of course, are the rabbis. Therefore, the rabbis can step in and say, oh, this owns to this and this doesn't own to that. If you want an equivalent, near equivalent, getting into medieval England, also Canada, ownerless property is cheats to the throne. Meaning, like if someone dies, if someone has no inheritors, the money goes to the government. Right? So for example, when Prince Philip died, the Duchy of Edinburgh escheated to the Queen, and she became the Duke of Edinburgh because he wasn't available to do it anymore. And then, when she died, Charles became all the other things and the Duke of Edinburgh, and then he eventually gave it to his younger brother. Okay.
Were there sages at the time of Hillel? The way this is written, it sounds like they were sages.
Okay.
It says sages have the authority. The dilemma was raised before the sages when Hillel instituted the cross wall. So they had to be sages then.
Okay, so here we go. There's Moses. There's Joshua. There's the elders. There's the great assembly. Then after the great assembly were the pairs. Pairs were people like Atalia and those other people. The last of the pairs were Hillel and Shammai. After Hillel and Shammai, then you have the rabbis in general, and the Sanhedrin. So Hillel and the other members of the pairs before were the sages. They're included in the notion of the sages. Hillel was the Nasi, and Shammai was the Av Beit Din, head of the court. Top guy, second guy. So yes, Hillel is in the realm of the sages. Sages, like Hillel's not a rabbi because the term rabbi hadn't come into fashion yet. The people after Hillel, they start getting the name rabbi. Although sometimes, like Rabban Gamliel, why is he Rabban and not rabbi? Because the name hadn't settled quite yet, so he's Rabban.
And the sages went away as soon as the rabbis started taking authority.
The sages and the rabbis are the same group.
Yeah.
When we talk about the sages, we're talking about people from here, from the Great Assembly through to the close of the Talmud, if you will. Okay. And often we talk about Hillel the sage. So he's in there. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Right. So the sages can do whatever they want. We all.
Do they all have to agree?
What?
Do they all have to agree?
Well, the sages at this point have a Sanhedrin, so they have a court. And so the court presumably has sort of a centralized location. So do they all have to agree? Well, a majority has to agree, or whoever's in charge has to agree, right? You know, sometimes when I say the government says this, it's really some guy in an office who has that ability. Okay. Shall we? Well, it's 11. Shall we go on?
I thought the class was an hour and a half, no?
Okay, then let's keep going. Sure. Okay. No, take it
All
away.
right.
We're a dilemma.
A dilemma was raised before the sages. When Hillel instituted the prosbul, was it for his generation alone that he instituted it and the custom developed to continue using it? Or did he perhaps institute it also for all generations?
Okay, that's a great question. Like, there are 2 court cases in Texas right now that this doctor's involved with. One case only considered this one woman's pregnancy and would have no effect on anyone else's pregnancy, which of course they ruled against her, so she fled the state. And the other case is, can you please clarify what the exceptions are for all time, which hasn't been ruled on yet. Okay, so same thing here, right? Sometimes you're making a ruling and it's just for a particular thing. Sometimes it's for all generations. Okay, we want to know what this is. Okay.
Okay, the Gemara asks, what difference is there whether it was instituted for his generation only or for all generations, when either way it is still in use?
Yeah.
The Gemara explains the difference arises with regard to nullifying the institution of prosbul. If you say that it was for his generation alone that he instituted it, then we can nullify it if we desire. But if you say that he instituted it also for all generations, then there is a principle that a court can nullify the action of another court only if it is greater than it in wisdom and in number.
Right, so like the Supreme Court had a question, can we overrule past decisions? And in the early days, they weren't sure. Right?
Or even overrule the legislature.
But that's a
Nullify the law.
totally different area. Don't go there, don't go there, okay?
Therefore, we would not be able to nullify the ordinance instituted by Hillel and his court.
Because they're greater than us, we'll never be like Hillel.
But nobody's ever greater than the ones who preceded us. Things always seem to, you respect. The further back
I
you
know.
go, the more you respect.
Well, in certain areas. In other areas, I'd like to think that Einstein knew a whole lot more about math and science than, say, Newton, and Newton was way ahead of Aristotle. Okay? So in some areas, we are better than we were in the past because we are able to build upon the past. On the other hand, in every fantasy novel ever, the current generation, we could never do what they did in the old nobody has the skills anymore, nobody knows how to do it, it's lost information. And I don't want to say Judaism is kind of like a fantasy novel, but we do have this notion that, the Geonim, they were so smart, but we are just pale imitation.
So in, I believe in the 900s, who was it who prohibited men from having multiple wives?
Oh, that was Rabbeinu Gershom.
Okay, so,
Mhm.
so does that apply here? Because I mean, isn't that the same as Hillel? Who, you know,
So Rabbeinu Gershom was able to do it because they had a conclave and they had a big Beit Din, and they decided for all of the four nations, for all the four sections of Ashkenaz, we will make this decision, and we'll do it for 1,000 years, which, by the way, was a little bit more than 1,000 years.
So that is all up now.
But yeah, sure, they made a declaration that this was, so if you want to undo it, you would have needed to gather a similarly representative body. So, if you want to, it's an interesting question. So prohibition's brought in and is changed by a, 2/3 of the legislature and 3/4 of the states. How many states? What percentage of states? Would it be interesting to note that it was like, say, 3/4 of the states that, sorry, 4/5 of the states that brought in prohibition, but only 3/4 of the states that got rid of it? Would that matter?
you mean when it was repealed?
Right, what if the repeal was by a smaller percentage, still over the bar, but a smaller percentage than the thing that brought it in?
But if you met the bar, you.
If you meet the bar, you meet the bar, and that's the point. So, greater in number and wisdom, meaning of similar stature, right? If they had the full Sanhedrin, we need the full Sanhedrin.
Well, the full Sanhedrin was 70.
Yeah.
But then there were various courts depending up
Yeah.
to 23.
Yeah.
I've forgotten it, so.
So, the question is, can we ever be as great as the past, right? Yeah. Maybe. Because we know things they didn't know. I mean, yeah. Okay. We were looking at something. Only if it's greater wisdom than number. Therefore, we would not be able to nullify, or is it still by Hillel and his court? What then is the halacha?
Me, still. What then is a halakha? The Gemara suggests a resolution to the dilemma. Come and hear what Shmuel said. We write a crossbow only in the court of Surah or in the court of Nahardi, as they were the primary centers of Torah study, but not in any other court. And if it enters your mind to say that he instituted it also for all generations, then let them write crossbow in the other courts as well.
So what he's saying is, he didn't write it for all generations, but he was very powerful, and so he could get away with it, and we're very powerful, we can get away with it too.
The Gemara rejects this proof. Perhaps when Hillel instituted the crossbow, he did it for all generations, but only for courts such as his court, which was the primary court of his time, and courts like those of Rav Ami and Rav Asi, as they have the power to remove money from someone's possession.
Maybe he did it for all time, but for courts like you.
Okay. However, for all other courts which are not as authoritative, he did not institute this ordinance. Therefore, the statement of Shmuel cannot serve as a proof with regard to the manner in which the crossbow was instituted. The Gemara suggests another proof. Come and hear that which Shmuel said. This crossbow is in Ubena of the judges. If my strength increases, I will nullify it. The Gemara challenges this statement. How could Shmuel say, I will nullify it, but isn't it the case that a court can nullify the action of another court only if it is greater than it is in wisdom and in number? It must be that Shmuel holds that Hillel did not establish the crossbow for all generations, and in his time, it carried the force of a mere custom. The Gemara rejects this proof. It can be explained that this is what he said. If my strength increases so that I become greater than Hillel, then I will nullify the crossbow. By contrast, Nachman said, if my strength increases, I will uphold the institution of the crossbow. The Gemara asks, what is meant by I will uphold it? Isn't it upheld and standing? Why does the crossbow require further support? The Gemara explains, this is what he said. If my strength increases, I will say something about it, and I will institute that even though the crossbow was not written, it is considered as though it was written. And people would no longer need to write a crossbow, as it would be considered as if everyone wrote one.
Okay. Now, we need to remember, the Talmud does not resolve anything. So don't look for an answer here, okay? Do not look for an answer here. But they're definitely at the stage of saying, we have authority, right? In terms of prophetic power and authority and political power, the rabbis are saying we can make decisions that affect people's lives, that affect their money, that affect their property, that affect their persons, and we can pretty much make the Torah say anything it is that the words will bear. So they're not originalists, but I know that there's a category of Supreme Court jurisprudential thinking of the words can bear, the words can mean any language that the words will bear.
Sounds like with the Supreme Court, they observe precedents. You know, they won't override a previous court unless it's very important to do that.
Or they really want to.
That's no longer true under the court.
No,
Not what?
if they
It's
really
not true
think
under the
they
third
really
court.
wanted to.
Oh, what? No, they said, no, every time the Supreme Court,
Yeah, every time a Supreme Court justice,
It
sorry,
goes
a
before the
potential,
Senate.
potential Supreme Court
Right.
justice goes before the Senate for approval,
Yeah.
the Senate always asks, do you believe in stare decisis? And they always say yes. And now look at the last 3 years, right? Stare decisis doesn't exist because now it's only true if the originators of the Constitution or the amendment could have thought of it.
So I remember, I can't remember if it was abortion law or if it wasn't voting for women, but it was a feminist issue. And
Well, voting for women was an amendment.
yeah, I know, but I'm thinking in Canada.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
It may have been abortion, it may have been divorce, I'm not sure which it was. But in an early year, it was the court was like 8-1. And then it came up again about 10 years later and it was like, I don't know, 6-3. And then when it came up the next, eventually, it was like that. And this was a dissent, and then this was a majority on an issue that came up before the court. And what had changed was society had changed. And what was true then wasn't true here, and these ideas had an influence on those people. Which is the value of writing dissents. So this is still stare decisis, but stare decisis, the Supreme Court in Canada certainly, but the United States, it believes in the concept, but it is not bound by precedent. They can really do whatever they want. Sorry about that. That's why I love reading legal decisions and things. They're so entertaining. Okay. Mishnah Torah,
Mishnah Torah.
something
Rebels.
different.
The
Okay.
Supreme Sanhedrin in Jerusalem are the essence of the oral law. They are the pillars of instruction from whom statutes and judgments issue forth for the entire Jewish people. Concerning them, the Torah promises Deuteronomy 17:11, you shall do according to the law which they shall instruct you. This is a positive commandment. Whoever believes in Moses and in his Torah is obligated to make all of his religious acts dependent on this court and to rely on them.
Okay, concept number one, the court is in charge. Good.
Number two, any person who does not carry out their directives transgresses a negative commandment, as Ibn continues, do not deviate from any of the statements they relate to you, neither right nor left. Lashes are not given for the violation of this prohibition because it also serves as a warning for a transgression punishable by execution by the court. For when a sage rebels against the words of the court, he should be executed by strangulation, as the following verse states, a person who will act deliberately. We are obligated to heed their words wherever they, A, learn them from the oral tradition, i.e. the oral law, B, derive them on the basis of their own knowledge through one of the attributes of biblical exegesis, and it appeared to them that this is the correct interpretation of the matter, or C, instituted the matter as a safeguard for the Torah, as was necessary at a specific time. These are the decrees, edicts, and customs instituted by the sages.
Okay, so the sages can tell you what to do because, hey, we know this from the oral law. B, oh, we've inferred it from the written law. Or C, we think it's a good idea. Not too broad. Okay, but
She gives you the opportunity to change. It's
Yeah.
what you saw there.
right, yeah,
So
absolutely,
who decides?
absolutely. But they do, because you only have one Supreme Court at a time. You know, it's like Canada had that problem, and the way they got rid of it is they severed their ties with Britain, and so things were no longer appealable from the Supreme Court to the to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in England. They said, hey, we want to have decisions over this. We don't want you guys to be in charge of us. We want to be in charge. We want to do it ourselves. Okay.
We no longer have a central court that is in charge of all, or that oversees the law for all of.
Oh, for the Jews.
So what,
Correct.
I mean, who's in charge? Would be
Who
myself.
is in charge?
Good question.
Of the head rabbi in Israel
No.
was in charge.
For Israel,
Yeah, for Israel,
sure.
right.
For Israel, sure.
Yeah.
So the way it happens is, let's see if it gets there. Yeah, it's gonna come to you, it's gonna answer your question,
You'll have to wait till.
but it'll wait till
You'll
next
have to
time.
wait till next.
Don't
time.
We'll wait till next time.
Tune in next week.
Don't throw it
Okay.
away.
Don't throw it away, hang on to this. Okay. Or if you think you might forget it in your car, just hand it back and I'll give it again to
I'm
you.
gonna do that.
Okay,
Well, I have one at home.
C is building a fence, isn't it?
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what C is.
yeah, it's the Siyag Torah. So
No, it is.
you can, yeah. It's a flexible system, it has to be a realistical system because it's a human system, right? These are human beings we're dealing with. I know, Jews are human beings. And you have to have some flexibility because, you know, kindness is a supreme value.
Okay.
But because there is no real central deciding body. So one group of Jews is like this and another group of Jews is like that,
Yes,
whoever the leadership is.
yes.
Which one there.
It doesn't matter because they're different places. So for example, in our minyan here, we do not wear tefillin at all on Chol HaMoed. In my minyan that I went to in at HAU, when you did wear tefillin on Chol HaMoed, but you took them off before Hallel, right? The rule is you take off tefillin before Hallel on a festival, but before Musaf on Rosh Chodesh. You do it before Hallel on a festival because on at least one of the festival, you need your hands free, and you know, lulav and tefillin is not a good mix. Whereas here, the issue never comes up. Now, when I came here, I saw that you guys were doing it, in a word, wrong. However, it was wrong according to my custom. It wasn't wrong according to your custom. And when a person comes to a new community, they adopt the custom of the community, except if they can keep their own custom privately. So, an Israeli who comes to America, and it is the festival, and it is Pesach, and they only observe 7 days, but the community observes 8 days. They observe 8 days in public, but in their house, they can eat a loaf of bread. Okay. So, all of the different practices continue, and every different community has its own minhag hamakom. For example, the minhag hamakom here is you pause before Ashrei for someone to announce the page during weekday services, but in the morning only.
Even when page 78 follows page 77.
I know, which was really weird because in my lifetime here, I've only ever seen it violated twice. The first time was yesterday, but he didn't know any better.
That's true, because he wants.
But if it happens tomorrow, it's a precedent and that custom is no longer in effect. It will have been abrogated.
When does minhag become halacha?
When it happens 3 times in a row. Okay, minhag avotenu halacha hi. The minhag of our ancestors is a halacha. So for example, this thing here is a minhag. There's no justification for it. But oh my God, are you gonna yell at me if I don't put it on when I lead services? It's a halacha. It becomes a halacha when everyone agrees that it's no longer just a minhag.
Everybody has to agree, that's tricky.
Well, the majority.
Yeah,
We
we
have
choose
a
it, but
committee
not
that says
everybody.
you're gonna.
It's like the synagogue where half the people sit down halfway through Aleinu, and the other half stood for all of Aleinu. They have different customs, and then they have the custom of yelling at each other. Or self-segregating, so there's the sitting side and the standing side, so the bride and the groom side.
Yes, so now instead of having men on one side and women on the other, you have those.
They start by that. And someone tells me that that's at their shul, it was people on the rabbi's side stood and people on the Cantor's side sat.
That's only if you have a Cantor, it doesn't apply.